When I first moved to Willow Creek, a quiet little town in Oregon, I wasn't expecting much excitement. My life at 52 had settled into a predictable rhythm: morning jogs, a freelance writing career, and the occasional fishing trip on weekends. After my divorce 5 years ago, I had learned to be comfortable with solitude. That was before Madison Cole moved into the apartment across the hall. She couldn't have been more than 27. Bright auburn hair, freckles sprinkled across her nose, and an energy that seemed to light up the hallway every time she stepped out of her door. Madison was friendly to everyone in the building, but from the beginning, I noticed something different in the way she interacted with me. It started subtly. The first time we met, she caught me struggling with a box of groceries and offered to help. She laughed when a jar of pasta sauce almost slipped from her hands, and there was something in her gaze, a playful spark, that lingered just a second longer than most people's. Over the next few weeks, I saw her often. Sometimes she'd accidentally time her laundry runs to match mine. Other times she'd knock on my door to borrow sugar or ask if I could help fix her leaky kitchen faucet. It was always little things, but each request came with warm smiles, casual touches on my arm, and compliments that seemed too personal to be purely neighborly. One evening, while I was coming back from a late jog, I noticed Madison sitting on the apartment steps with a mug in her hands. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. She looked up and smiled. "You always run at the same time," she said. "I could set my watch by you." I chuckled, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Guess I'm a creature of habit." She patted the step beside her. "Sit. You need to cool down before you pass out." We ended up talking for an hour about movies, music, and her recent move from Seattle after a bad breakup. There was something disarming about her openness. She laughed easily, leaned in when she spoke, and looked me directly in the eyes. I was aware, painfully aware, of how much younger she was, but she didn't seem to notice or care. It was during these conversations that I began to see a pattern. Madison had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the room. She'd ask questions about my life, listen intently, and remember the smallest details. A week after I mentioned my love for apple pie, she knocked on my door holding a homemade one, saying, "I thought you could use a treat after your jog." Another time, when I wore a new leather jacket, she tilted her head and said, "That color makes you look 10 years younger." She knew exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. And then there were the little coincidences. One Friday night, I went to the local coffee shop to work on a deadline, and there she was, sitting at a corner table. She waved me over, claiming she had been just about to leave but stayed when I arrived. The next week, I stopped at a bookstore downtown, and there she was again. I realized it wasn't chance. Madison was deliberately positioning herself in my orbit. The turning point came one rainy Sunday afternoon. I was fixing a shelf in my living room when a knock came at the door. Madison stood there, wearing an oversized sweater, her hair slightly damp from the rain. She held a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "My power's out," she said. "I thought maybe we could hang out until it comes back on." We ended up talking for hours, the rain tapping against the windows like a steady drumbeat. She told me about her dreams of starting a photography business, about how she'd always been drawn to older men because they seemed calmer and more grounded. When she said that last part, she didn't break eye contact. It wasn't just a casual remark, it was deliberate. A confession wrapped in a compliment. In that moment, I realized exactly what she was doing. Younger women, when trying to win over someone older, often mix vulnerability with admiration. They create a space where you feel needed and valued, while also planting the idea that you're special in a way others aren't. Madison knew how to walk that line perfectly. She wasn't pushy. She didn't make overt moves. Instead, she built a connection brick by brick. Shared moments, inside jokes, small acts of kindness. And it worked. I found myself thinking about her when she wasn't around. I noticed her perfume lingering in the hallway. I even caught myself looking for her in the coffee shop, wondering if she'd just happened to be there again. But here's the thing about being older. You've lived through enough to know when emotions are steering you into risky territory. As much as I enjoyed Madison's company, I also knew there was an imbalance in experience, expectations, and probably intentions. So one evening, When she knocked on my door with a plate of cookies, I invited her in and we talked. Really talked. I told her I valued our friendship, but needed to keep it as just that. She smiled, almost knowingly, and said, "I figured you might say that." After that, the visits became less frequent. She still waved in the hallway and made small talk, but the lingering touches and perfectly timed coincidences stopped. Months later, I heard she had started dating someone closer to her age, a graphic designer from downtown. I was happy for her, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss those evenings when she made me feel like I was the only person in her world. Looking back, I realized Madison had never been manipulative, at least not in a harmful way. She simply understood the art of attention and how powerful it can be when used with intent. Younger women like Madison don't always use this approach to seduce in the traditional sense. Sometimes it's about testing boundaries, seeking validation, or simply enjoying the thrill of making a connection that feels a little forbidden. And sometimes it's just about reminding someone, whether they're 27 or 52, that they're still worth noticing.